Hi, welcome to this session uh, of intervention theories, result-based management, and logical framework. So, in this session, we'll have an overview on intervention theories, and of course, mainly theory of change, and then we'll look at result-based management, which has to do with, but mainly we'll focus on results chains, and then we'll look at logical models and causal chains, and then the logical framework approach to M&E as an M&E tool. So, intervention theories, another one, theory of change. So, a theory of change, or intervention theory, or program theory, or project theory is an explanation of how the activities, how the activities of any program or project, or basically any intervention, would be expected to contribute to particular results in a short or long term. So, excuse me. They explain, the theories explain how the activities of any intervention, in that case, would contribute to a chain of results, and therefore that's why later on we'll be looking at this kind of chain when it comes to results-based management. In other words, the flow of inputs towards processes of outputs, and then outcomes, and therefore leading to impacts. So, a theory of change is can be used as an evaluation criteria to see if particular results are becoming as a result of particular activities or processes that have been implemented within the intervention. And therefore turning questions into hypotheses basing on the theory of change, and therefore applying the if-then statements to test whether particular results can be attributed to certain intervention processes. So in that case, if the intervention, for instance, in that case the independent variable, then the outcome, in other words, the impact or result, would be the independent variable. So, in other words, looking at the causal effect chain, which would lead to the impact at the end. So here you have, this is what we're talking about. This is the theory of change. So you have implementation strategies. Let's say an example of, let's say you want to reduce on incidences of HIV cases in a particular community, and you choose to distribute condoms as part of your intervention. So the implementation strategy would be distribution of condoms, and then therefore lead to outputs which has to do with, for instance, how many condoms have you distributed. Of course, the assumption there would be that people would accept to receive the condoms, and then here the assumption would be that they have accepted to use them, and therefore the outcome would be how many can use, how many, the percentage of people using condoms, and that would be an outcome. And then with the assumption that in that case they would consistently use the condoms, and that would lead to the impact. And an indicator of the impact would be, for instance, reduced incidence of HIV or STDs infections in a community. So this is the basic result chain that shows theory of change. And of course you have an example here, which is, let's say you want to distribute up, you want to improve health within a particular school. So you would therefore deliver apples to schools, which can lead to red apple skin eaten, but also apples eaten with whole or with juice, or apples eaten instead of junk food or snacks. And if the apples are eaten instead of junk food, it would lead to decreased body mass index. If red apple skin is eaten, would improve quercetin levels. If apples eaten whole or in juice, would improve vitamin C levels, and a combination of all these results would lead to the impact of improved health. So in other words, the result chain does not necessarily mean that it is linear or leading to a specific result only, but it can lead to different results that a combination of all of them can lead to one ultimate impact that you intend to change. Theory of change can be used as evaluation criteria, of course, to identify specific evaluation questions. It can be used to identify the variables to be included in the data collection, because if you do not have those variables, then data collection might become challenging. But theory of change can also be used to identify outcomes that would rather otherwise be measured to verify success. Theory of change can also be used to examine intervention aspects in terms of progress and implementation, such as results and inputs. It could also be used to assess contextual factors to look for during data collection, those contextual factors that would affect the success of the project or intervention. So what do we mean when we talk about result-based management for M&E? A result is any measurable or desirable change arising from any causal effect. In other words, if you have decided, like I said, if I use the previous example, for instance, if one decides to distribute condoms, then what happens in a particular community? So that's the cause effect chain, of course, measured in terms of result. So the result-based management is a management strategy focusing on performance and achievement of outputs, outcomes, and inputs. And therefore, in this case, the intervention management focuses on measuring those particular results that have come up as a result of implementation of particular inputs and activities. So this is the chain. So the inputs, if you have inputs and then you invest them into doing activities, the result would be outputs, of which outputs can lead to outcomes, and then outcomes can lead to impact. So the outputs can be, for instance, resources, what we use to do the work, the activities. We cannot do the activities without resources. We need resources to implement the activities, and of course, the activities is what we do, processes or actions that we had planned earlier to do towards achieving particular results. And of course, if we have a combination of outputs, in other words, resources combined with actions, then we have immediate results that are produced. It could be goods or services, depending on a particular intervention, and those would therefore lead to what we wish to achieve, and that could be specific beneficiaries that are, for instance, experiencing consequences of our outputs and activities, and therefore this could lead to the ultimate aim that we want to to change the specific change that we want to create in a particular uh, community or a particular scope or focus of area. So you have budgets and resources within projects that relate to inputs. These can lead to outputs, which are immediate results, and this can lead to outcomes, which are intermediate results, and this can lead to ultimate goals, which are the impact. And of course, from input, we experience short-term results and then towards impact, we are aiming at long-term impact, which at the end we want them to be sustained. Okay, so this is the results process and the levels, and here we have the result chain. But now, as we said earlier, at the end of the day, the measurement should be aiming at looking at attribution levels, whether we can attribute our results to our projects. So the higher we go in terms of the result chain, the low level of attribution, the low level of attribution, because as we move towards impact, towards outcomes and impacts, the project management or the management tend to lose control over how particular results would be experienced, and therefore we move from attribution towards contribution, because at the level of outcome and impact, you have many other factors or other interventions or projects that are influencing the change that you had intended to create, and therefore having low levels of attribution at impact level, and having high level of attribution at input level, because there you have control over whatever you are doing, and therefore we can say we have a low level of contribution at input level, and then we have high level of contribution at impact level compared to attribution. So when we're looking at results based management, we are thinking about the causality. And the causality in this case is we are looking at causal effect relationship between our actions and inputs or activities, and then the results that are achieved after implementing those activities and inputs. And so we apply the issue of the concept of if-then logic, that if, for instance, this is done, then what will be achieved. So inputs, if we do inputs, then what kind of activities would we want to implement? Then what kind of outputs or immediate results would we wish to have? And then what kind of outcomes or intermediate results would we want to achieve? And then what kind of goal or ultimate impact would we want to achieve? But of course, noting that under activities and inputs, we have some full control over project management. But beyond the immediate the immediate results, which are outputs, the management control keeps reducing. And again, this is in relation to what I just talked about regarding the attribution contribution aspects earlier. So a simplified results chain, or that looks at the causal effect or causality. So you have again apples, people at risk of poor health, and then you distribute apples or deliver them, people eat them, and then after eating them, they improve nutritional status, and then the ultimate goal is improved health. Simple and simplified result chain or results-based management process. Another example here is, of course, from Muije 2018, looking at the result chain for a strategy on male involvement in maternal and child health with the aim of improving maternal and child health after, and then again reducing maternal mortality rates, of course, after engaging men. So the idea here is that low male involvement contributes to high maternal mortality rate, but also um, um, contributes to to um, low achievement of maternal and child health services, and therefore the idea is that involvement of male would therefore improve males' perceptions, and then they support their wives during antenatal, or to have services at delivery or postnatal services, and therefore improving motivation of women to change in their health seeking behaviors, and therefore improve maternal health care utilization, and thus leading to these ultimate goals of improved maternal health and reduced maternal mortality rate. But of course, you have these other outside factors that the projects would not control. These are the risks or assumptions or other external conditions that would be looking at when we are designing our logical frameworks or interventions. So keeping in mind that while we are implementing these, there are other factors that would influence achievement of our results. Okay, so here you have your immediate outcomes, you have intermediate outcomes, and then you have your impact. So in that case, we use the results chain and intervention logic to help us design the logical framework as a main tool in M&E, or in assessing performances in our interventions. So you have the intervention logic or framework is an approach of carrying out M&E, and of course includes logical framework analysis and outcome mapping, and the components show levels and units of action, as we've been looking at them in terms of a sequence that shows the if-then effect. So the logic models and results chain therefore identify expected results. So again, we looked at this in the previous session. So the program logic defines or illustrates inputs, activities, outputs, outcomes, and impact, and of course sometimes also showing the external factors or constraints, such as for instance this in this case you have health systems or facilities that also factor in when it comes to improving maternal health, rather than only concentrating on male involvement. So there we go again. So you have the issue at hand, which is, for instance, raw involvement of male. I'm using this as an example. Let's say if we have low involvement of males in maternal health, what can we do? Then we need resources and other capacity building activities or aspects, finances to run the activities, and then we can look for all those activities such as sensitization or trainings and so on to involve males. And then you have increased number of males involved in maternal and child health, and then you have women motivated to use maternal health services, and therefore because they are supported also by their males, and then you have improved maternal and child health, and also uh, reduced maternal mortality rate and child and infant mortality rate. So you have also other factors. Keep in mind that you have these other factors that would affect your project. So the logic, let's take a look at the logical framework. So the logical framework is a planning tool, and it is a systematic planning procedure for complete project cycle management or intervention management, and it can be used as a problem solving approach, which takes into account of all these other factors, including views of stakeholders, and of course involves sensible planning. We already looked at the sensible thinking of the results chain, and therefore giving out a clear logical on how to tackle particular problems. And of course it comes into play at very early stage because it would be a guide for how we can do particular interventions. And so it is an expression of results chain. In other words, what we expect to achieve if we were to tackle a particular problem. So basically, this is the matrix, and this is the results chain or the intervention logic, and then you have other columns that have to do with indicators, means of verification, and then assumptions. The inputs have been included here, but definitely they don't belong here, but depends on how different organizations arrange their matrix. But definitely the inputs should be leading to the activities, but you shouldn't be surprised if you find inputs are also integrated within the logic framework for some organizations. So again, the logic framework operates on the causal effect relationship, that if results are delivered and assumptions hold true, then the project purpose would be achieved, or particular project results would be achieved. So for instance, if these assumptions, certain conditions are held true. Let's say if, for instance, we have enough resources as inputs, then activities should be able to take place, and therefore would influence any kind of result at this level. If assumptions or conditions that would have limited activities to take place, if those conditions are positive, then we should be able to expect immediate results after combining our inputs and activities. Then if the conditions that would have prevented results from happening, if those conditions are held positive, then we should be able to achieve our outcomes. And therefore, if other assumptions or conditions that would have limited achievement of purpose, if those are held positive, then we can be able to achieve our ultimate goal, which is the impact. So the logic framework is designed in that way that we put in consideration other factors, because if we don't, then we might not be able to know how our project or why our project has failed or not. And then you also have the verifiable indicators and source of verification to know how or whether particular results have been achieved. So the logic framework therefore identifies that relationship between the project resources, the activities, the objectives, the immediate results, and then the intermediate or long-term results. And again, this is the basic So you have the goals, which are the long term, and then you have the outcomes, which are primary results or intermediate results, common in terms of, for instance, knowledge or practices of a target population. And then you have the tangible products or goods or services that you have delivered after implementing doing your activities. So the chain, the intervention, the logic goes up. This is the result chain. Okay. And then you have the other additional columns where you have indicators, and the indicators define how look at describe how we would measure the changes that we are talking about in the intervention logic here, or what we want to achieve. So under impact you have impact indicators, and under outcomes you have outcome indicators, which for instance would measure the progress. And under output you have the output indicators, and then you have the input indicators under activities. um, then you have also, of course, the means of verification. If we are saying that we have indicators that will be measuring how activities have been achieved, then we need to know where we are going to get the information to use to measure those achieved results. And in that case, then would be the means of verification, or where or how to get information. Could be reports, could be interviewing beneficiaries of the project or other stakeholders or managers, all sorts of data collection methods. And we are going to have a whole session on these data collection methods. Then you have assumptions. I've been talking about these. These have to do with external factors that would affect each of these levels of results. So you have external factors that are beyond management control that would affect activities and inputs. You have external factors that are beyond control of the management that would affect outputs. You have external factors that are beyond control that would affect achievement of outcomes. And then you have external factors that go beyond control of management that would affect achievement of particular goals. Okay, for instance, if you want to reduce your impact is to if your goal is to reduce FGM, female genital mutilation, and its impact, then there are factors that are beyond you, which have to do with, for instance, norms or cultural beliefs, and so on. So you just have to be aware of those when you're implementing your activities. So on the rows, which are these, and these, on the rows we have goals, outcomes, and outputs and activities. So on the rows we have goals. These specify why we are acting, what impact we want to create in the lives of people, and of course the goal explains or describes broader development benefits which the target group can expect to gain. And the purpose, or in the outcomes in that case, or intermediate results, specify where we want to get at the end of the project period, so immediately after the project, and describes the changes that we want to see in the lives of people at the end of the project. The outputs specify what we want to produce in order to realize the desired changes, so in terms of goods or services. And then the activities describe how we are going to produce particular outputs. On the columns, we have the objectively verifiable indicators, or OVIs, which specify how we are going to measure what we are doing or what we want to achieve. And therefore they tell us exactly what to measure and find how performance will be measured, to see whether we are progressing well or not. The means of verifications are sources of information, and therefore specify how we are going to verify information that can be used to to measure the indicators. The assumptions specify external factors that affect the project's implementation, and therefore the project management must keep in consideration those assumptions, because if not, then they wouldn't know how or what has affected success or failure of a particular intervention. Therefore, necessary for creating certain changes to influence success. The inputs are materials or resources needed in order to achieve or put into action particular activities and tasks. So the summary is just here, as I've been saying. The goal is the higher level of objective, the purpose is the effect which is expected after immediate results, and the output are the results that the project management should be able to guarantee. And of course, the activities are those that have to be undertaken in order to produce the outputs. I've already talked about the verifiable indicators, and each level of the intervention logic, each level of the results has its own kind of measures. So at the goal level, the indicators measure, verify if the goal is fulfilled. At the purpose level or outcome level, the indicators measure or verify whether outcomes have the extent to which the outcome have been fulfilled, and the indicators at outputs measure direct or indirect, directly verify the extent to which outputs have been produced. And of course, the indicators at activities or outputs measure or verify goods or people or services necessary to undertake particular activities. So you have, for instance, examples here on how you can construct your indicators. We have a whole session on indicators in the next session. So here you can look at please mind that this is only showing quantitative measures, but indicators can also be qualitative in a way of looking at success. So, but these examples are mostly showing how you can construct your quantitative measures. For instance, number or percentage of boreholes constructed if the project was on construction boreholes to reduce waterborne diseases. So at output level, you can look at number of health educators established and so on. At outcome, you can look at number of people who know causes and effects of waterborne diseases and so on. At impact level, you could look at, for instance, percentage reduction of people suffering from waterborne diseases, or levels of satisfaction by community members in terms of access and use of water sources from the boreholes that you have constructed. The means of verification, again, at each level you have, at goal level you have sources of data that would verify that would give a picture on what you've been able to achieve at goal level or impact level. And then you have means of verification at purpose level to show whether purpose is achieved and therefore can be measured using your indicators. And then you have means of verification at output that show sources of data necessary to verify output indicators. And then you have means of verification or sources of data necessary to verify status of activity level indicator. Again, as I said, assumptions, again, under each results chain level, you have assumptions that would affect achievement of that particular result. And if they are not considered, they would have a great impact on your on your uh, on your intervention. So these again can be looked at as risk factors that would affect achievement of your results. Okay, and these can be events or conditions or decisions that are outside control of management. And of course, as we know, the higher we go from inputs towards impact, the the more loss we have on control over particular factors that has have an impact on our intervention. So a logical framework can be used for improving quality of project design, can be used to summarize design of complex activities, since we've already seen that outcomes could be many or results could be many for a particular project. So we can use it to contextualize a particular intervention. But logical framework can also provide objective basis for activity review or monitoring and evaluation, and can be used to identify and analyze expected assumptions or risks. So it can help, in that case, it can help to achieve stakeholder consensus as a planning tool, can help in organizing your critical thinking regarding your perceptions or thoughts about the project, can help to communicate as an information because it has all kinds of data that stakeholders can use. It can also summarize and link key aspects of anticipated results or impacts of the project, but can also identify um, uh, uh, systematic or concise or coherent planning that different stakeholders can rely on. Uh, Again, this is a note, I already talked about it. The budget for intervention can be incorporated in the logic framework, or it can be given separately. But again, M&E budget is important in order to facilitate data collection and of course processing, analysis, and reporting. So it is very important that it has to accompany the logical framework as a tool. So here you have your take home in groups of 3 or 4, as you could identify any development intervention and design a logical framework for it, and then present in the next session, if you will. These are some of the resources you could use for your, to give more, to get more information on theory of change, results chain, or and then the logical framework. And that marks the end. Thank you.